Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech Talk, a podcast where Amit and I talk about various technology related topics. This week, we're going to talk about internet browsers. Now, it might seem like a very mundane topic, and we all know about internet browsers, but they're a vast wealth of knowledge, and it will give you a very foundational understanding of how internets work. And a lot of us, while using internet browsers, we don't exactly know what other options are out there. A lot of us are just using Chrome, as everyone else is, or Internet Explorer, or Edge recently. But there are vast wealth of options out there, and also there is a lot of knowledge to be known to understand the internet properly. And the internet browser is a very good starting point. And not just the starting point, but even if you are a seasoned internet user, I think you should still understand how internet browsers work, because it will give you a very foundational understanding on all of the things to do with internet. So yeah, very excited to talk about internet browsers, and very excited to talk about internet browsers. Let's dive right in. Amit, what's your definition of internet browsers?
So, browsing has been, I think the word browsing, a verb, has become synonymous with internet browsers. So early on, when the internet was made, I think we talked about it in a couple of previous podcasts as well. So when the internet was invented, we were trying to access different files on different machines in a network located far away, maybe in the same country or in a different country, same location, different location, etc. And internet browser was a way to read some of those files hosted on those machines. Um, if you look at Microsoft Windows as an operating system, there is something called as file sharing or network sharing, where you can share a drive like your C drive or D drive, which people might be familiar. So whenever they open Windows machine, they go to the C drive where their operating system is installed. And if they buy a laptop, they'll go to C drive and they can see their operating system. So when they actually go to their machines and see the C drive, they can actually share it with someone else on the same network. It could be a wired network or a wireless network. And when they share those networks, they can actually read those files from a different machine. So that's sharing. Now suppose you want to read HTML files, so that's where the browser comes. You can read HTML file in a notepad, but that will be just text. You'll not see all the images, you'll not see the videos, you'll not see any interactive content. You'll just see text or the code or the source code that people can actually look right click on the web page and see. So internet browsing, and in order to do the internet browsing, browsers were invented. I think one of the first browsers was Mosaic, and then we had the Netscape Navigator. Then Internet Explorer burst into the picture, and Microsoft put a lot of effort in making sure that Internet Explorer becomes the dominant web browser, because they were shipping it for free with Microsoft Windows operating system at that time. And Netscape Navigator was trying to reinvent itself, but it didn't become that popular. And then Mozilla Firefox erupted onto the scene. It was open source, it was much faster, it had lots of new features, and it was just simply much better than Internet Explorer. And after Mozilla Firefox, you had Google Chrome. Google came up with its own browser, and that just completely changed the world. Initially, Firefox was one of the Internet Explorer and Firefox, they were the top browsers in the world, and now Google Chrome dominates to about 70 to 80% of the browsing market, internet browsing market. There are still, I mean, you have Android smartphones where people have Google Chrome by default. If you buy an Android phone, you'll have Google Chrome. If not, if you buy, say, a Samsung phone, you'll have a Samsung browser. But people normally choose to install either Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or some kind of
Samsung
other
browser is also
browsers.
based on Google Chrome as well. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
thought that Samsung browser is just a different browser.
It's just white labeled based on Google Chrome engine.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe.
Yeah.
Good to know that. So yeah, so Google Chrome, and then Microsoft was trying to compete with Firefox, but because Chrome came into the picture, they had to now compete with Chrome. So they were trying to reinvent, and they ultimately came up with Internet Explorer 11, and that's where the buck stopped, and they came up with Microsoft Edge. Now, Microsoft Edge is based on Chromium, which is an open source version of Google Chrome. So Chromium is the main base version on which Google Chrome is based, and Brave browser is based, Vivaldi is based, Microsoft Edge is based on. So these are a couple of browsers which are based on the Chromium engine. So, anyways, so that's the whole gamut of internet browsing experience, and that's what browsers are for. Basically, to go to a website, but browsers do a lot of other things, which I'm excited to talk about in this topic, in this talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the history. It's really good way to sort of see what was and what it is right now. And a lot of you guys have probably also seen various memes that used to go around in, comparing Chrome with Internet Explorer and how slow Internet Explorer is. And I've enjoyed some of those as well. And there was not only memes, but I remember there was an actual study where it was found that people who are using, and not right now, because right now majority of people are using Chrome, but there was a point where a study was done that people who are using Chrome are said to be more successful in their career and just overall more successful in life. But that might be misleading, because that was, as we probably said, touched upon in our previous episodes, that there is such a thing as causation and correlation in statistics, and that was more of a correlation, because usually people who are naturally the kind of person who takes initiative are also the kind of person who would go out there, do their research, and then go and download Chrome. So it's not like just if you use Chrome, you would be, because of using Chrome, you would be more successful. But usually the people who are destined to be successful, who takes more initiative, doesn't just go with the flow, but does their own research, etc., they're the one who would also end up downloading Chrome. So that was an interesting research, which I was quite amused by. And also, I'm sad to say that I was quite late adopter to Chrome, because I always tried to give the benefit of doubt to the store brand, or whatever comes in the box. And Internet Explorer came with the box, and it had some integration with other things. Some of those were like back in the old days. People, some of you will know about MSN, Messenger, and various other Microsoft products. They integrated well with Internet Explorer. So I took a long time, while knowing Chrome is the faster browser, I took a long time to transition from Internet Explorer to Chrome. But once I've like really seen Chrome and I've done some test in my own computer, it was at the time, and I think even now, it just is so much faster than, it's noticeably faster. So yeah, it was a very easy decision when it came to it. So yeah, then I moved on to Chrome, and then the Chrome provides a lot of other benefits that Internet Explorer at the time just didn't, because you can have your Google account set up and backed up, and your favorites and everything can be transferred in different devices. So all of these things, and now they're also expanding more with Chrome extensions, and also password manager, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, back in the old days, I used to, I transitioned from Internet Explorer to Chrome quite late, because there was a lot of integration from Microsoft products with Internet Explorer. But when I did the comparison, it was, difference was like night and day. Chrome was like so much faster, and then it kind of came with so many other benefits as well. It was quite an easy decision for me to move to Chrome. And yeah, since then I've used Chrome, and I've also explored various other ones that are out there, like the ones you mentioned Firefox, and recently Brave browser, which was built, you know, like the main base of it is from Chrome, but it enabled a few newer benefits, like more privacy, and also if you use it, you gain Brave coins. So there were quite a few other some of these cool new technological advantages there. So yeah, I would recommend our audience to try Brave browser as well. It's actually, they made it really easy to switch from Chrome to Brave. It will import all of your Chrome data into Brave, and you'll get all the benefits of Chrome in your browser with some would say it's better looking. And then there is obviously Opera, Edge, and Firefox there already. There are some benefits of using different browsers that some people might not think about. Like for example, if you have multiple accounts, and you use cookies or whatever, you want to stay signed in your Gmail or Facebook, etc. You don't want to sign out of Facebook and sign back in with a different credentials every time when you want to switch your accounts. Not just Facebook, you might have two Gmail accounts, two Hotmail accounts, etc. For example, I have a personal Hotmail or Microsoft account, and I have a professional Microsoft account, which is for my job and other professional communication. So for that, now I use Firefox as a secondary browser. So my personal Microsoft email is always logged in Chrome, but my professional Microsoft email is always logged in Firefox. So I don't have to always log in separately or switch and do that hassle. And then again, if you do like some other passive income kind of things like Amazon, and you opened two different Amazon accounts, you can also do the same with that. So there are benefits of using multiple browsers. One of these that you may not have thought of is that the signing in part, the your account credentials are saved in both, and you can just easily switch between or simultaneously be logged into two different accounts through two different browsers. So that's a benefit that you could think of using in future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, normally what I do is if I want to test a URL and if it's not working, I just try to open it in a different browser, because a different browser means the cookies are not stored, and you can still open it and check whether it's actually a network issue, a cookie issue, etc. So yeah, multiple browsers definitely helps. But going back to the fundamentals, I think you covered a very important point. Like Internet Explorer was default, and it was being sold with Windows. So a lot of people actually started using that, and Internet Explorer became very huge. It had a very huge market share because of that, and Microsoft then had to fight a lot of antitrust cases, and Internet Explorer was then, it was still very popular, but then once Firefox came into the picture, people started flocking towards Firefox. And I think the main advantage of Firefox, because I used Firefox in my college days, was that Firefox allowed tabs. So you could open multiple websites in the single window. So normally Internet Explorer didn't allow you to do that initially. After a certain, I think Internet Explorer 5 or 6, it allowed tabbed browsing where you could open multiple tabs in the same window. So for people who are very young, who have not used Internet Explorers, the old versions, in order to open multiple websites, you had to open multiple windows of Internet Explorer, and it used to become a very huge pain of managing those different windows and seeing what is opened where. And Internet Explorer also didn't have any pop-up blockers. You could not turn on and off anything. You could not add any extensions, etc. So it was just a pain. And sometimes the websites also didn't render correctly on Internet Explorer. So with Firefox in the game, what happened is you could attach extensions, you could modify JavaScript, you could block pop-ups, you could do many things, you could have games, you could have offline apps, you can have many things. And Mozilla Firefox had its own store where you could download the extensions. It came up with the concept of profiles where you could maintain your profile. Then you could save your bookmarks, and if you go to a new machine, then you can log into your profile and you will get all the bookmarks to your new machine. So that was a game changer. And then when Chrome came, Chrome was basically much faster than Firefox. Firefox used to be the fastest, but Chrome was much faster. Now Chrome has a lot of issues because Chrome has become very huge. It has a lot of features, so it takes a lot of memory. So sometimes when you have multiple tabs open in Chrome, it takes up a huge amount of memory and it makes your computer system very slow. So Chrome is now I mean, not a market leader in terms of browsers. It still has a huge share, but I wouldn't say it's the best browser at the moment. There are better browsers in the market if you want to use. I now personally use Chrome because I have a Google account and it's easy to just maintain it. But it's not that your Google account will work only on Chrome. It will work on any Chromium based browser because they all use Google. So if you have Google account logged in into your Chrome, you can actually use a Google account to log in into Brave, Vivaldi, Edge, etc. And even Mozilla Firefox is also experimenting with now in the nightly build with the Chromium engine. So if it shifts to that, then even Mozilla Firefox, you would be able to log in using your Chrome. So that's a good advantage. Now, apart from opening websites, browsers do a lot of other things. So browsers have to fetch the website and render it on your web page. And every browser has a different rendering engine. You might have heard of Gecko, you might have heard of WebKit, and there are many other rendering engines. And each browsers use a different rendering engine. Chromium-based browsers, I think they use WebKit or something. I'm not too sure, but they use a Gecko. I think is used by Mozilla, and Safari has its own rendering engine. And Safari is the only browser that's coming by default with OS X. So any Apple operating system, iPhones, iPads, and the iOS, your iMacs, they all come with Safari by default. And Windows, it comes with Edge and Internet Explorer 11 now. That's the highest version of Internet Explorer that's currently being shipped. Linux will not come with any browser, so depending upon the flavor of Linux that you install, it can have either Firefox or Chromium. It will not have Chrome, it will have Chromium, or you can just download an open source version of any browser. And so these are just the browsers that render the websites, and each rendering engine gets a rating. Like, okay, how there is a test, I think there is an asset test which tells if the website has actually correctly rendered the if the browser has correctly rendered the website on your browser. And that test is actually it sets a benchmark about how good a browser is against the standards. And Apart from that, browsers, it saves your bookmarks, so you can do a lot of have a lot of bookmarks. I have a lot of bookmarks. They're all saved in my profile. So if I move to a new machine, if I log in anywhere, I just get all my bookmarks. And bookmark means saved websites. So websites you visit again and again, and you don't want to type the URL, you just want to click something. So bookmarks are an easy way to tell the browser that, okay, this is a URL that you frequently visit, and you want to save it with this name. And if you open the browser again, you can just click on it and it can take you there. Browsers have also become very smart, so they save your password so you don't have to remember them. So like Rinat said, you can have your Facebook or Google account logged in and you don't have to log in again and again. They save those passwords. You can decide not to save them, but it's up to you. So browsers give you that option. They save the history as well. Any website that you visit, they save that history, so you don't have to remember which website you visited ages back. If your browser crashes, it can recover from it. It can restore all those web pages. So history is very important. Bookmarks are important. Chrome has its own apps, Chrome Store, where you can download extensions similar to what you could do on Mozilla Firefox. And because the browsers like Brave, Vivaldi, they are all Chromium based, they have access to the Google Chrome Store. So you can download whatever extensions you download on Google Chrome, you can download it for the other browsers. Safari has a different thing because it's OS X and it's very limited to Apple products. So that's why we don't want to discuss Safari. But yeah, that's again a different browser and it's managed separately. Apart from that, you can manage your theme. So you can have a dark mode, you can have a light mode, you can have different colors, you can hide or unhide buttons that you don't want. If you want a very clean look, you can do that. And there are many other things that you can do with a browser. You can change the settings, you can read files, you can actually open files inside a browser. You can open an HTML page. So suppose you write a code in HTML and you want to see how it renders, you can open it in your web browser. If you want to access your router installed in your home, you can access its admin page through your web browser. If you want to read a PDF file, you can do that. If you want to open a scalable vector graphics or .svg file, you can open it in your browser. So browsers do a lot of things that we are actually not aware of. They store our passwords, but they also store addresses. They also store credit card details. So they are quite powerful in a way that they manage a lot of things, and that's why these browsers are not very light. They have a big installation size, but and they can auto update as well. So if there is a problem with some things, then they can auto update. Recently what has happened is a lot of websites are now going with HTTP secure protocol. So that means you will see a lock symbol every time you visit a website in the address bar, and you can actually see that it's a secure website. And that means that I mean, the certificates are well established, well reputed, and they are known to everyone. So if a website is unsecure, the browsers will not allow you to open them. And there are extensions that block pop-ups, so it will not allow pop-ups. So suppose you have a lot of advertisements, etc., you can block that. You can block cookies. So cookies are basically files that are stored on your machine or within your browser to help the browser remember what you have done, and based on that it can recommend. So it basically creates a profile of you every time you visit the website, and every website has its own cookies, and they remember basically what you have done, what you have seen, what you have logged in, and they store that information in those cookies. The cookies are stored in your machine, so when you visit those websites again, it retrieves the information from the cookies, and then it displays the content. Of course, GDPR came into picture, so there's a lot of controversy related to that, because now websites have to show you a pop-up. So every time you go to a website, you have to say accept cookies, accept saving data, etc. So it's a huge hassle. So yeah, there's so many things that the browsers can do today that it's incredible. I mean, it looks like a very simple topic just to talk about internet browsers, but they are doing a lot of things in the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually a very good point where I actually want to explore this idea of what browsers are. And this question might feel like we're going back to the very basic, but the way I kind of think about it in my head, I feel that's actually quite interesting because I remember, like, when I was in school and studying mathematics, and we in sixth grade we started learning about algebra and all of the complex higher mathematics and stuff. And then when I uh, got to 10th grade, only then I came to know about set, and I thought that set is such a easy topic, but I also introduced me to very various sort of fundamental things about mathematics. I mean, not all additions or multiplications are the same. If set theory introduced me that numbers and non-numbers can also be in the same set, and they could be added and multiplied differently. Now, this is completely different the topic from what I'm going to talk about in terms of browser. But what the reason I brought this up is a lot of the times we go very advanced in terms of usage or of a topic, but sometimes the foundational understanding is so important, so critical, and sometimes actually more complex, that you actually have to wait until you're an expert and then understand what's actually going on that very basic level. And with internet browser, I feel like that's kind of true in a way, because we know how to use internet browser. We go to Chrome, we Google stuff, we go to our known websites, and we do various complex stuff, like we pay online, we do shopping and all of these things. But to understand browsers in a way that is very foundational. So that, to do that, you kind of need more of a technical expertise. And I only got that when I started designing websites from the back end. Then I realized what's actually happening in the front end. Because before that, I thought, okay, there is Chrome, there are different softwares, and you just go to the same website from whichever browser you're using. But actually, now if you think about it in this way, that there are data that's being hosted. So there are data that's being hosted from a hosting site, or someone's computer, or someone's mainframe supercomputer, wherever some company are hosting. And that data can be represented to you in many different ways. And what browser is doing is querying that data from that hosting site, getting that data in a format which can be different codes like HTML, JavaScript, and then it's also getting the contents like audio, video, or picture files, and then it knows how, through the HTML code and CSS, etc., knows how to represent it to you as a front end display device. And then once you see that not all browsers displays the same websites in exactly the same way, there are small tweaks, and then you realize that different browsers are translating that code differently to represent that information. So basically what browsers are a desktop application. They're not an internet application. A browser is something that you download and install as a desktop application. Chrome, Brave, Internet Explorer, whichever one you say. And when you open up a browser, if your default web page is not Google, which most of ours is, but it just opens a blank screen. So if you compare it with any other desktop applications, like for example a photo editor like Photoshop, or a video editor, it opens up with an empty slate where you can put your photo to edit or video to edit or whatever. Just like that, a browser opens up a blank white space, which is nothing, unless you obviously decide, automate, or decide to tell it beforehand that always go to google.com. It would open a blank slate. And that's nothing. That means that it hasn't loaded anything from the internet yet. So what browser does is a desktop application, which is the job of which is to connect using the internet through different ports. It used to be 8080. Now with HTTPS, it might be using different ports, but there are different ports that that enables these connections or these data transfers between your computer and the rest of the world. And using that, it can go to different hosting platforms or hosting website, hosting services, and get the data that you queried through this desktop application. So we must remember that the browser is a desktop application. And in the browsing window, which is, at the very top, there are file, edit, and, the usual context menus, and then there are some shortcut buttons. Those are part of the desktop application. And then the majority of the screen that it takes up is like a window, or is a sort of empty slate, where this desktop application shows the information that it gets from the internet and displays it to you with the, according to the code, HTML code that it received from that, host. So that's what it is. And once I found out, it kind of made me understand the internet a little bit more better. And I felt, like a crystallizing, clarifying moment where I felt like I understood what's going on a little bit more. So I feel like I don't know if everyone has this understanding or idea from get-go, but it was for me, it was a time when I started designing website. Then I realized that what am I trying to show, and then I realized all of these new ways of thinking. So hopefully some of the audience would also have this new understanding of web browsers, and be able to treat browsers that way. And this really helped me understand what am I seeing on the internet, and how to differentiate the from what's happening in my desktop and what's happening in my on the internet. And if I download something, I'm giving the command inside the browser, but it's then bringing that data or that file and saving it in my laptop or computer or whatever. And this made me understand cybersecurity a lot more as well, because I could differentiate between what's happening where. Before, I would, try to sign out of something and not be sure did I actually sign out, but the cookie remained, kept my data or whatever. But then I, open the browser again, and then I'm still signed in, or how the data is like sort of segregated between my desktop and the rest of the world. It became a lot more clearer with this understanding I had. And I wanted the audience to understand this as well, because this will give you um, a better handle on a lot of things like cybersecurity and privacy, and just giving you a better understanding of what you are doing on the internet. So yeah, and that's the reason why you could have different browsers like Chrome or Firefox, Edge, and have different profiles altogether, and they don't know, they don't know about each other. For example, if you think about privacy, Facebook knows all the other tabs you have open in that same Chrome or whichever browser you have Facebook open, which is, you might think that's quite a serious, violation of your privacy if you didn't know that already. But Facebook does collect that kind of data. You have Facebook open in one tab, and then you have, I don't know, you're doing some research on BBC or some political research, which might be quite sensitive, and then Facebook knows exactly what your interests are from the other tabs you have open. But if you had those tabs open in a different browser, Facebook wouldn't know. Or,
That's
well, Facebook will probably.
yeah, that's one of the tricks that people apply when they have to book flights, right? If you want to book flights at the like Skyscanner, Expedia, they know what you're looking for, and they'll show some increased prices. But if you open a new browser, they'll show completely different prices. So a lot of times people, if they try to search for flights, they try to use another browser to book the flight, because they might just get the time, but they in order to get the cheap prices, they will go to another browser. And you mentioned a very interesting thing about cybersecurity. I think a lot of websites get hacked, and a lot of websites, you don't know which are secure, which are not secure. So that lock symbol is actually quite important. So if you go to the top address bar, you see the URL that should have a lock symbol. If it has a lock symbol, then it means it's a secure website. If it doesn't have that, then it means it's an unsecure website, and you have to be very careful if you're trying to still visit that website. And browsers now have this capability that they'll redirect you to only secure versions of that website, and they'll not redirect you to unsecure versions. So there is like HTTPS only mode in browsers. And the security is very important, because people get hacked, they get scammed, etc. There are a lot of phishing attacks. So you just click a link and it downloads something on your machine. Rinat, I think you mentioned a very, very important point. It's a desktop application. It's not an internet. It's used to read content hosted on the internet, but in the end, it's a desktop application. So if you download anything, it gets downloaded onto your machine. If you are actually seeing the page itself is actually getting downloaded on your machine. It's the web pages are stored temporarily, and it's displayed. So in case you don't clear the cache, you don't clear the history, when you open the browser again and when you load the page, it will first look at the cache that's downloaded on your machine, then it will look at the cache that's downloaded in the cache system of the website, and then it will ask the main server to actually send the page. So there are different levels at which the websites are cached and stored. So it's very important to understand this very simple concept. I think I also never thought about, like, yeah, browse, you know it, but I think you don't think about it loud. That, yeah, it's a desktop application. When you open it, there's nothing. It's not consuming any memory because it has not downloaded any page or images, or it's not displaying a YouTube video. It's just a blank slate. And then you can actually open some settings, and you can do some things. And once you have downloaded the page, the good thing is, because the file is now visible on your browser. If you disconnect from the internet, you can still go through that page. You can still read the news. You can still maybe stream some part of the audio or stream some part of the video. And YouTube has this very interesting uh, a visual indicator where it shows a gray line, where it shows that okay, whether the video has been downloaded to that quality in your machine, and then a red line which indicates where you are in the stream. So if the gray line is completely spanned the length of the video, then it means if you disconnect the internet, you can still go through the entire video without being connected to the internet. So that's the browsers are so amazing that they can do all these things, and it's incredible where they have come from where we actually started.
Absolutely, and there's another idea I also want to sort of put it out there that yeah, browsers, what they're doing is they're taking the data from a database. You can call the hosting place a database because they're hosting data, and then they're displaying it in a visually easy to understand way for you, which is because it's made for you to audience to easily understand and do the thing that you came to the website to do. But a lot of the times we're afraid of APIs or as soon as we know about command prompt or in a Windows desktop or terminal or in whichever operating system, we get really scared that okay, well, I don't know about this or this is like too technical. But if you think about it, APIs are doing exactly the same thing. You install another desktop application like Postman or similar, and then you query the data you want from this other place somewhere in the internet, and it returns you the data that you asked for. A browser is doing exactly the same thing. So you shouldn't, to the audience, you shouldn't really be intimidated with APIs because, by using browser, you're doing the exact same thing. It's just visually more appealing. It's made to be visually appealing. So, mass users can easily use it. But in theory, exactly the same thing is happening in API. You're making a query, and in relation to a browser, you're pressing a button, and then it's loading a page. In API, you're making a query, and it's loading data that you asked for. And even in command prompt, like when Windows 98 first came, it was still based on the disk operating system or DOS, MS.
DOS, yeah, MS DOS.
And what it is, you could go to my computer and then C drive and then new folder or whatever, or you could go to command prompt and say, CD space and then C drive and then go to this directory and this. So it's just different ways of visualizing. One is text based and one is more visual. And
Yes.
obviously we are visual animals, so it's so much easier if there is if a window looks like a folder, and if I double click and then I enter another folder, or in the same like in web pages, if I click a button, I go to this other page or whatever. But ultimately the same thing is happening. It's just you're using two different interfaces. So yeah, I mean, I would just urge the audience that don't be intimidated by the interface, because the same exact thing is happening in both cases. It's just two different interfaces. One is probably a little bit difficult to comprehend, but it's not in any other way more complex than the visually easier one. So
Yeah.
it's just a
It is,
different.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it because, I mean, APIs are also behind a lot of websites. So there is a login API, there is a payment API, and a lot of the websites, they are basically static pages, and in order to make them dynamic, they use APIs. APIs are basically application programming interface, and we have talked about it in our the earliest talks that we did, I think episode 2 or 3. So if you want to listen to that podcast, please do. But APIs are quite powerful, and I think Rinat mentioned a very important aspect that you have a desktop application like Postman or some other API tool where you can actually request for data from the database, and it sends it back to you. But the websites are also doing the same. So in order for you to see what kind of requests are going, there are intercept tools like Burp Proxy, on which we have done a podcast again. So I think we are all converging now to the basic fundamentals. So basically, what you can do is the request goes from your machine and multiple requests. So whenever you open say Google, and a request goes from your machine to Google servers. But before you type it, once you type in the URL, the URL has to be translated into an IP address. So that IP address gets translated by the DNS servers. The DNS servers then know the IP address, which is like numbers. So they are how to explain it? It's like 1.1.1.1. So it's like four different numbers connected by dots, and the maximum digits they can be is from 0 to 255. And there is a specific reason for that because they are in all binary. And once that's translated, the URL, the text is translated to numbers by the DNS server. The request is then go sent to the cache server and then to the main server. And there are in between there are load balances, etc. And that request then comes back with a response, and that response comes back with a error code or a success code. So normally we see 404 page. 404 means content not found. Okay, so that means you cannot find the content, and it's a server error. Sorry, maybe a server error or request error. So you have these different types of errors, and you think, how is the browser, how does the browser know all these things? So in the background you can actually see what kind of requests are going. So in Chrome you have something called as developer tools. If you press F12 on your keyboard, that's function 12, F capital 12. If you press that button on your keyboard, it opens something called as developer tools. And there, if you click on network, if you can't see network, just do a quick Google search, and maybe I'll link a video down in the description. If you click on network and then you refresh the page that you were trying to visit, say you refresh Google, you will see so many different URLs. So Google, when you open Google, the request is not just going to Google, it's going to all the advertisers, it's going to all the other websites, analytics, etc., that are there on the page. It just takes a few milliseconds to load the entire page, but in that millisecond there are like hundreds of requests going, and you can see each individual request, and you can see how much time it has taken, what is the payload, like what is the size of the file that's being sent and received, etc. And it's very, very fascinating. And in that developer tool you can also see what is the response. So if the request is sent via this URL, they'll show, okay, this is the request, it is being sent to this server, and these are the content of the request, it is signed by this person, it's sent on this date, it will have a timestamp. Then you have the response will have a code. The code will tell the browser whether you should display an error or you should display the page. Rinat mentioned about HTML and CSS. So browsers have this rendering engine. If you just show HTML, it will just show you text. CSS gives the format, the content, the format. So if you see text right aligned, left aligned, or center aligned, if you see icons in a particular way, that's all CSS. HTML can't do that. HTML is all left aligned in English language, of course. We have to be very careful. So there are so many different ways that the browsers are helping improve your productivity on a day-to-day basis, and we are oblivious to it. We just think of a Chrome browser or any browser just a tool to do our jobs quickly. But behind the scenes, there's a lot going on.
Absolutely, and it's actually very fun to think about, but it's also very important to know about. Be aware, that awareness that we just talked about. What's the browser? It's a desktop application, and it's showing its main content. In Photoshop, you see the main window in here where you edit the photos, but then you have all the tools to edit those photos on the side and around you, like if you want to cut, copy, or draw on it, etc. Just like that, in a browser you have the main window where you see the website that's being loaded, and that's the part that's not necessarily down to the desktop application. For example, in Photoshop, if you load a image to edit, that image is not related to Photoshop, a desktop application. That's a new image that came from outside the desktop application. Same way, in a browser, the website that you're loading, that's not related to the browser itself. But then you can use the options provided by the browser to do various things to the page that's just loaded. You can download that page, you can go back, forward, and various other options that there are.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so that awareness, I think, is very fun, but also it's really good to be aware of as well. And hopefully our audience are going to go away from this talk with a little bit more understanding and awareness of of internet altogether, because that's the main outlet that we all use to connect to the internet. Yeah, I said the API and internet browsers are similar in some way, but I'm still not going to start using API to go to Facebook, even though I can get my friends' statuses in a JSON format file and look at it on Excel. But I'm not going to do that. I'm still going to be using Chrome and other browsers to do it, because it's just so much more convenient and visually appealing to the way the internet browsers present us the data that Facebook or any other websites provide. So it's good to be aware of it, and hopefully our audience
So I
would
would
have.
like to mention something that yeah, it's the browsers are the key to everyday use, and it's very important. I think one of the things that we have seen recently is that most of the applications are now shifting towards the browser. If you look at most of the desktop, I mean, if you look the amount of applications that you have opened on your desktop, the biggest part of your day-to-day activities are now inside the browser. Okay, so you use very few desktop applications on a day-to-day basis, and that's actually quite powerful because if you can do everything in the browser, then why do you need a powerful machine?
Yes,
Why do you need like $1,000 laptop?
absolutely.
You
Before you
can
used to.
yeah, so that's what Chromebook is. And if you want to listen to Chromebook, we have done a podcast on that as well. So please do listen to that podcast. And the whole idea is that in the future, you may not have an operating system like Windows or Linux or Apple. You'll just have a browser, and you'll do everything that you need to do from the browser, from creating PowerPoint presentations to creating Excel sheets to editing videos to creating templates for anything to writing newsletters to edit files to translate things. All you need is one browser, and that browser will do and you can do everything from inside that browser. And to run that browser, you don't need a very expensive machine. And
Absolutely, that's a very very interesting concept. And again, like for those of you who are you who want to be a little bit more independent, like me, they probably still want to be the old school and try to find desktop application. But then again, even me, I mean, I used to have a PDF editor installed before, but now I do all the PDF editing online in free websites in fraction of time, and in batch mode as well, where you can edit like 100
multiple
PDF.
files, yes, exactly.
Yeah, so there are a lot of benefits, and I always do the calculation, and a lot of the times it wins to do it over a browser rather than having a desktop application, buying the license for it and maintaining it, and taking up CPUs, etc. So yeah, both are good, and none of they both have advantages and disadvantages. But we
Of
are
course.
more
Yeah.
every day. We are moving more towards like a internet-based
Yes.
thing. Like for
Even most
example,
of the desktop applications now, they in some way they connect to the internet to verify certain things. Like even Microsoft
yes,
Office, you need to download it from the internet, and then you need to log in to connect to your profile, and it'll verify the subscription. Based on that, you can buy a standalone version, but then you'll not get any updates. So it's interesting that even some of the desktop applications, they need an internet connection. I mean, of course, not all the desktop applications need internet connection, and that's why it's good to use. But I think you can listen to music, you can watch videos, you can read the news, you can do calculation, you can do so many things inside of a browser that it is incredible. So browsers are one of the first applications that you now open when you start your machine, and that's where you go and do most of the things. And that's why we thought, okay, this is a very good topic to talk about today.
yeah, and I feel like we didn't even touch upon a few other things that we could have talked about browsers. But it's at least gives the audience a basic understanding to go away with and be aware of the desktop application that they're using on a day-to-day basis. So
Absolutely. And we have talked about search engines, we have talked about cloud computing, we have talked about Chromebooks, we have talked about APIs, we have talked about how to build a website. So we have covered a lot of things related to internet. And I think the audience, if you're really interested in knowing about those subjects, and if you're not heard those podcasts, so please do listen to those podcasts, and I hope you find them very useful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do let us know if you have any other topics in mind that you guys would like us to cover. Our contact details are in our usual places in YouTube and in the podcast hosting site, wherever you're listening from. Thanks again, everyone, for listening and tuning in regularly with us, and hope to see you guys again next week.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.